Hello, Tim from Fair Play Now on the 13th of February 2023. Wow, what a fantastic weekend I've just had there at the Uprise and Shine event in East Sussex at the Hope premises, the homeschooling hub. And it was just so great to be in the company of like-minded people and hearing so much great content. It just blows my mind how many great people there are out there with so much knowledge, so much stuff I don't know. I come away from these events having learned so much, and I've got most of the speeches recorded, so I will be editing them one by one and then uploading them either directly to this platform or maybe to Rumble and then onto my website, depending on exactly how or what they're saying, basically, if you get my drift. So an absolutely fantastic weekend. And next weekend, of course, we've got the Oxford thing. I've got full details for you now on that. So we're meeting in Oxford City Centre at 1 p.m. in Broad Street, it's called, which I'll be coming on up there on the train. So basically it looks like, from what I can see on the map, you just come out of the station, turn left onto the main road, and then it's pretty much straight down to Broad Street. Yeah, there's a couple of other streets that it's called, and then it changes into Broad Street by the looks of it. So it looks like it's quite easy to get to from the station. Don't know about driving, but so if you're driving, you'll have to sort of find out what's going on there. Might be best to do a park and ride thing, I suppose. But anyway, some good speakers lined up there. I know we've got Mark Devlin speaking. We've got Dan Aston Gregory, the Pandemic podcast guy. He'll be speaking there. Jonathan Tilt, who I believe runs a political party, I can't remember the name of it, but he'll be there speaking, and two or three other speakers as well, including a young lady who I think's about 12 called Jasmine, presumably speaking about how she doesn't want her future to be unfree. I should think that's probably more or less what she'll be saying, but yeah, that's what we've got to think about, isn't it? The kids and their future. It's, you know, it's them we're kind of doing all of this freedom stuff for, isn't it? Because people like me, you know, we've lived a good proportion of our lives now. If you're kind of around my age or older, might have hopefully another sort of 20 plus years in me, but you know, someone who's just growing up now have got sort of many decades in front of them, and it's down to the likes of me to help ensure that that future for them is going to be one that is free. And that is why I like to go along and do what I can at these events and recording these events, so that people can see that in the future, people can see that there were people around now who were sort of doing our best for them. So hopefully they'll get the message that we are fighting as hard as we can for their futures. And relating to that, I saw this video. I'm going to leave a link to it in the comment section and the description box below, because it is on this platform, and he's an American guy, and it kind of, he's really talking about the American system. But if you've got tax in your country, which pretty much every country has, it's going to be equally applicable to you. And he's basically saying, if I kind of printed out a bit of paper and made it fancy, and the content was basically, I'm going to rob you, but because it's on this fancy bit of paper, bit of parchment or whatever, that makes it legitimate. He was saying, how ridiculous is that? And of course, that's the original bit of American bit of paper, which I suppose is the Constitution, has got this written on it that we are going to nick, kind of a proportion of your earnings off of you for us. And he was just saying what a load of old rubbish it is. And I want to share that because I just see this kind of thing, sharing this information, just sort of trying to open people's sort of minds up, their eyes up and their minds up, to show that these things that we take for granted and that we think are perfectly legitimate, if we can sort of open people's minds that no, they're not legitimate, that's not right, it's not ethical, it's not moral, it's wrong, well, it's chipping away at the system just that little bit more. So it is a good one to share, I think, this video, because he does it in such a way that it's, why on earth do I sort of, pay my taxes and obey what's written on a bit of paper? How silly is that? Why do I agree to be robbed just because it's written down on a bit of paper? How ridiculous is that? He puts it over very well. You'll have to watch the video to get what I'm sort of driving at. But if you watch it and then you share it, and it's a good one to share, like I say, because, you do end up thinking, this is ridiculous. And it's just chipping away at the system a little bit more. That's what I see my role as, just chipping away at the sort of foundations, little by little, until we make sort of big inroads into the sort of psyche of the population to, show that things aren't right. And I'm going to, if you think the task is hopeless, oh yeah, Tim, we're never going to get to the stage where the entire population is going to wake up to all of this. Doesn't matter how much you chip away. Well, I'd just like to maybe help change your mind on that just by spending the rest of this video telling you a story. A few years ago, I think about 15 years ago, I guess it was, I visited the famous Allied prisoner of war camp in Germany called Colditz. I was privileged enough to actually go along there and visit the place. I don't think it's, from memory, I don't think it's too far from Dresden, so it's in that kind of part of the world. And when Allied sort of soldiers were taken prisoner by the Nazis, they were put in a variety of prisoner of war camps around Germany, and many of these prisoners of war were very keen to escape and get back to sort of Britain to carry on the fight, kind of thing. And many of them became prolific escapees, and often they got a lot of miles, hundreds of miles from their the camps, prisoner of war camps they were in, only to be recaptured. So the most hardened escapees, the most prolific ones, were put in this place Colditz, which the Germans were thought was escape proof, but people did end up escaping from them. And there was a couple of particularly remarkable escape stories. One of them, apparently the British were building a glider in the prisoner of war camp. They kind of went right up into the attic of the place, the loft, and they kind of closed off, built a false wall to close off a section of the attic up there, and so that the Germans wouldn't be able to see. And then they were building a glider just out of kind of any old bits of wood they could scavenge and tablecloths, things like that, and they were going to just sort of break a hole in the roof eventually and fly it out of there. And but the war ended before they could do that. But I believe there was I think I'm right in saying I saw a story just maybe a few years ago that they actually reconstructed that glider and built it to what they could see in the photos, and the thing actually flew, so it would have worked. But the most remarkable story is the French escape, and I saw this when I was there, and the French prisoners, they actually made a tunnel about 15-20 feet long. It kind of went upwards at an angle, I think, from memory, and once they kind of made this tunnel, they'd be able to get out of the main part of it and then escape relatively easily from there, I think. But the thing is, this tunnel went through solid rock, and what they had to do, the rock was obviously very hard, but what they found is if they got a little candle and just sort of burned a little section of the rock for a while, it would then sort of heat up and change a bit, I suppose, so that it then became crumbly and brittle, and then they could get the sharpened end of the spoon, spoon handle or whatever, and chip away at it. And they just kept doing that night after night after night. Can you imagine how long that would take? You'd have to get that candle, put it up on the rock, so probably sort of stand there for ages until it sort of warmed up enough, and then chip away at it. And it took them literally years, I think. Not sure, I can't remember how long, but it must have taken them a good couple of years at least. But they eventually made this tunnel about, 2 foot wide by, as I say, about 15-20 foot long, just by that process. And it's just incredible. And then I think they did escape from there. At least a couple of the guys managed to escape. So a remarkable story. And it just shows you that if you've got enough determination, the human spirit can overcome anything. Doesn't matter what the odds are, doesn't matter how little the chipping away appears to be initially. If you just keep chipping away, you can get there. So with that said, I think by watching this video and sort of going from there, I'm not saying you should use this video to immediately stop paying your taxes. You've got to stay within the system for now until the overall belief in the system is eroded, and then change will come organically. So that is my sort of take on it. But I think, well, what I'm trying to say is just by slowly changing perceptions that, no, hang on, maybe sort of paying taxes isn't the right thing to do. Maybe sort of funding what little amount of government we should have is necessary in some way, of course. Personally, I believe that we could lose 90% of the government infrastructure, the state infrastructure, and still manage perfectly okay, probably better than what we manage now, to be honest with you. And that would require a lot less funding anyway, and then that could sort of be sort of raised in much fairer means than what we've got now. But at the moment, we have to work within the system, but kind of chip away from it, at it from the inside. And I think that's the way to go. And I think by looking at this video and sharing it, we will sort of chip away at the system just that little bit more. So take a look at the video, you'll kind of see what I mean, where I'm coming from. I'll let you go and do that, and I'll be back soon. Tim from Fair Play Now, thanks for watching. Just a quick add on here, and circling back to the Oxford rally against 15-minute cities. They are now talking about this in Parliament, and thanks to the viewer who alerted me to this, but Rotten Politics featured this. I'll leave a link to his video in the comment section and description box below, as well as the other video. And an MP stood up in Parliament very recently and was basically speaking out against the concept of these 15-minute cities. And the minister who kind of answered this question kind of seemed quite sympathetic to what he was saying, and didn't seem to think that the 15-minute city idea was right either. So they are starting to talk about this in Parliament, and after this coming Saturday in Oxford, I reckon they'll be talking about it a lot more as well.